In classical iconography, the angel Gabriel is represented as being in humble posture on bended knee, sometimes even with a deacon's dalmatic on, when he comes to the Blessed Virgin. And this represents the gentlemanliness of God. The Holy Spirit is the perfect English gentleman. He comes to the soul and humbly asks permission to act. Grace is like that. God will never insist against the soul's will. The will is that inner fortress which only the one inside can open. And so it is with regard to vocation. There are gentle nudges. Often one talks to little children, and they do, more than one thinks, at an early age think of giving themselves to the Lord. And then when it comes to adolescence, they are drawn with the crowd or with the passion that might be in the middle of their attention, often nowadays nourished by means of distraction which weren't there before, which explains partly the reduction in vocations who come to fruition. Because even good souls can be contaminated by just a screen. John Bosco, who knew things, said that 1 in 3 were called. He could see it, but he could also see that it was rather like nature, very generous, and yet only some took fruit and seed and grew. The others are excessive, the others are like overgrowth, and yet they are potentially there and can still be called forth. I remember hearing this from a person who was with us on retreat before he got married. He said in French, "On y a tous pensé," we have all thought of it, mais il n'y avait personne qui nous y appelait. But there was no one there who called us. And so, when one relives the moment at which the saying yes in the will to the nudges of the Holy Spirit led then to a saying yes by the Church itself in the immediate superiors, who then solicit the yes of the ordaining bishop, which is the yes of the Holy Spirit, one sees how time sometimes is rather like that. It is in poise, as St. Bernard describes the whole of the cosmos in poise, as the angel is on its knees, waiting for a word from our Blessed Lady. Once the yes is there and not withdrawn, and once that is recognized by the yes of the Church, the rest will follow. And yet, one thinks about all that can go wrong. Indeed, the priest, one of the brethren who was teaching me in the community how to celebrate, or in his case more how to sing Mass, is right now in the process of seeking laicization. Even though a priest forever, one can cease to exercise the priesthood. And yet, the tragedy is that one is a priest and still a bomb of activity should it ever be used again. And it can only be used again very rarely, e.g. if a person is found to be dying in an accident, and even a laicized priest can then absolve. With regard to what happens after ordination, one is, from that point on, no longer free. Just as God the Father never goes on holidays, never has a notice in front of his door saying engaged or at rest, do not disturb, so too, once ordained, because one carries in one's soul for one's brethren the power of the Blessed Trinity as a link between heaven and earth, and a necessary channel of communication of God's own power for his creatures, so too one can never say, I am off duty. It doesn't quite work like that. A word in the street can be requested. A child can be blessed and consoled just like that by the providence of God sending a soul at that moment in time, awaiting rather, as in the case of our Blessed Lady and the angel, that there should be response and not refusal. So too, never should there be a refusal or even a taking away from availability, e.g. through wearing camouflage, which in practice takes away a priest from the church, at least in its visibility and availability and exercise. All this to say that the priesthood is somehow of the mystical order and sets one apart, and also with regard to one's behaviour, too much of the same thing is not good. And I remember our Archbishop, the one who ordained us, commenting on this one time in print with regard to taking away one's visibility in the name of getting at people. He calmly replied, "It may be the case, but I have evidence that it is not."